My first college that I went at, absolutely amazing college. Have nothing bad to say about them. Um, but at Hillsdale College, I learned a lot of lessons, and I feel like that's the reason I was there. Um, I learned how to. Initially, I learned how to be alone. Um, that's something that definitely plagues our newer generation of leaders. You have to get used to being alone a lot. It's just the way things are in today's day and age. I don't know how else to tell it to you, but you got to get used to being alone. And God's going to put you there. He's going to put you there because He's put me there. A little bit more open. Well, I just thank you for letting me talk to you guys, especially with my age. I'm a little bit younger than most people in here, so it's a real honor to be able to come up here and to speak to you guys about especially leadership, especially when I look to all of you most of the time for nice biblical examples for me to follow. I figured I'd just start with just my story. Even though I am 20, I've been through more than most people have. Just with switching colleges, and there's been a lot in my life. But I've always been around church. I have. It's ingrained in me. It's something that I think about 24/7, and I think about my walk with Christ pretty avidly. And I one of my earliest memories I can recall watching my grandfather preach in Ohio in our church over in the Miami Valley. And it's one of those memories that always sticks with you. It'll never go away. But starting in high school, things are a little rough in today's age. It's not easy for the younger generation, no matter how you look at it, especially when it comes to my generation. Um, but so through high school, I was obviously a very big sporting guy. Sports are kind of my thing. Football, wrestling, and track, all 3 years. It's just something I strived myself to be excellent at. And it's something that I found my faith in because it's it's very easy to excel at something when you're already striving for excellence in a relationship. And it's that continual relationship that just pushes you to greater lengths and to strive for greater things. And so going all throughout high school, it would be I'm going to pray before this game. I'm going to go talk to my coaches and pray before this. I'm going to do all this. And there is a lot of pushback, especially now in today's time. And it's getting harder and harder for younger leaders to, come forth because of how attacked they are, because they're just attacked continually. Even today, I was up at the high school helping with their mixer day, and you could just see it on some kids. You know what I mean? You especially if you've been in the faith for a while and you've helped to talk to people, you can just see it on some kids. Just that burden of a bad home life, a certain relationship that's affected them. And it was something it was kind of hard to see because they had me in charge of making friendship bracelets. And so I was in charge of something so small, yet when the kids found out that I was going to be there, since for some reason they are a little impressed. It's just me following my calling. I know my calling's football. And but all these kids show up to make friendship bracelets, and all the teachers come up to me and they go, "We didn't think anybody would show up." Because there's all these sports that they can be playing. They could be on these bouncy castles, on this other stuff. But I feel like it was more than that, especially today. Just in that room, you could tell there was no judgment for any of the kids. And we kept it nice and happy in there. Just a nice atmosphere for where those kids were at. And for a lot of them, they don't experience that. And so it was really kind of eye-opening being up there and seeing over 100 kids come in and make friendship bracelets when they're in high school. And it's just such a simple thing. Just a place to fellowship with other people your age, to be in that space together was really affected me today. But I think there's a lot that needs to be said to younger leaders. There's a lot that needs to be taught. There's a lot that needs to be learned, because our friends and the younger people beneath us cannot be reached the same way that we have been, or an older generation has been. They're a lot more, I don't want to say delicate. They're definitely harder to reach, just because there's a lack of trust, and there's a loss of familiarity in community, especially with the whole social media, everything. Nobody knows how to interact anymore. And so when it comes to social interaction at high school, it's like, oh, I'll text you about that, instead of, hey, can we just talk on the phone real quick? And so there's really a lack of community. And so being able to reach out to these younger people and to instill in them values that we were taught, because I was obviously raised way different than the average American is these days. And that's something really sad to think about, considering where our country was even 20 to 30 years ago. But as I'm going on, my first college that I went at, absolutely amazing college. I have nothing bad to say about them. But at Hillsdale College, I learned a lot of lessons. And I feel like that's the reason I was there. I learned how to be alone. That's something that definitely plagues our newer generation of leaders, is you have to get used to being alone a lot. It's just the way things are in today's day and age. I don't know how else to tell it to you, but you got to get used to being alone. And God's going to put you there. He's going to put you there, because He's put me there. And until you get comfortable being alone, He's not going to give you the people to expand your ministry. And it's been a hard lesson for me to learn. It really has, because I'm a very social person. I like talking to people. I like forming connections. I like being around people, because I've always been around my family. My family is everything to me. They're all I think about all the time. Like, I specifically came home as fast as possible so I could make it to my little brother's choir concert at Kings Island. So, and it's something that's kind of transferred over now that I'm at Montana. But I also feel like it's a protection, so to speak. Recently, I have been soft kicked out of my apartment because they asked me, hey, Evan, are you going to re-sign the lease on the apartment? And I was like, yeah, I planned on it, man. I was like, thought it was going good. And then they were like, well, we were wondering if our friend really wants to move in with us. So they didn't all like outright say it, but it was pretty implied. But it's probably because I don't like partying every Tuesday and Thursday, Saturday, Friday, pick a day. And my room's the closest to the living room, so the party pooper is always gets seen whenever he's at home. And so, I'm okay with them kicking me out. I'm 100% okay. And recently found a new place. But I also feel like it's protection in a way, because this year is very important to me. This year is something that's going to decide the fate of the rest of my life. And it's something I feel like I can't let any distractions come in. And there's definitely been some distractions where I was at. And so this segregation and this learning to be alone is something I feel like is super, super important, because you're not always going to have somebody anymore. I mean, we're not meeting up at places and just talking. It's, hey, you want to have a web chat and all this. You want to FaceTime. And it's really cool just where my journey is starting to take me. I'm finally, the coach has already told me I'm going to be a starter for next year, which was absolutely ecstatic for me. Just in our end meeting, they said they were super impressed with me this spring, and that I should just keep doing what I'm doing. And it was something I was really worried about, because trying to balance school, my Christian walk, and football, while also maintaining all the relationships that I have with my family, with my friends, with loved ones. And it's been a real juggling act. I mean, you kind of have to at this point, right? If you're not a jack of all trades, you're missing out on something. And so, but no, I'm super excited for where this year is gonna start to bring me. But I think throughout my walk, I've finally realized some really big things, and I've seen the spiritual preparation, because as you travel along, you're able to see what God's brought you out of, and it's absolutely insane to see where I've been pulled from in my segregation away from other people. And so it's cool to see maybe a friend group I was in at one point or another, maybe they've branched off and did something, not so godly. And then this other people that I used to hang out with, they're doing this. And so it's just really cool to be able to look back on what God has brought me out of as he's protected me and kept his hedge of protection around me. But something that really sticks out to me is it's Luke chapter 12, verse 48. And it says, "Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more." And I think that just kind of encompasses what it takes to be a leader in Christ. Any person he deems as a leader and responsible and somebody who has a place in his ministry to reach out and to go out and, reach other people, a lot is entrusted. You're entrusted with souls. That's your job. It's like you are saving somebody for all eternity. That's a lot to entrust to somebody. And especially when you're thinking about that is 14, 15-year-old. I mean, it's one of those things that just weighs on your heart. And so it just really stuck out to me how it's put in Luke. Much will be required. From him they entrusted much, they will demand the more. And so it's not that it's not it says they will demand the more, right? It doesn't say like you have to do it like full speed. Okay. And so in Luke it says, to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. So no matter what, the more you're entrusted, the more and more is going to be asked of you. And so when you think about it that way, it's like the load never does get lighter. the load don't get any lighter. It always gets heavier. That's encouraging. It's like, well, when you put it that way, that means right now is the lightest I'm ever going to be. And that's a bit encouraging when you think about it. It's like it only gets harder from here. And so if you don't stop and see what you've been through and enjoy your life and your journey of what you've come out of, it's only going to get harder. And it doesn't matter where you're at. And so it's just, this year's really affected me, living 27 hours away from my parents. It's been rough not being able to see my mama. I probably call her too much, but she loves me, hopefully. But it's definitely caused me to grow up. And that's what it's for. And speaking to new leaders, you definitely need some alone time. If you surround yourself all the time, always going, always being fast moving, you're going to miss some stuff. You really are. And it's something that I realized, it's something that something profound I came across when I was just climbing the mountain next to my house. I was just up above. In Montana, we have a huge M up on the side of a mountain. And there's a trail that goes up to that mountain, up to the M that's made out of concrete up there. And there used to be an old copper mine even farther above that. But the thing is, the trails don't stop. They go all the way to the top. And so one night, I'm just walking. I have my headphones in. I got my Jesus music on just because I felt like I needed to go for a walk. And I found myself climbing the M. I don't know why. I had to lift the next day at like 6 a.m. And I was climbing, made it all the way up to the M, and I sat there, and I was looking at the sunset, and I was like, well, what if I pushed it a little higher? And so I kept climbing. I got up to this first rocky outcrop. Wind's whipping now. The wind is going crazy. It had stormed the whole day. It had finally like dried out, and I could see the sunset. First rocky outcrop, I'm just standing there. Feel like I'm on top of the world, right? And I was like, but there's another rocky outcrop a little bit higher. So I go walking. I make it up to the top one. And I was sitting there on that rock with like the whole of the city laid out in front of me. The river running right down to my right. The football field here. The campus here. And then just the whole city of Missoula laid out in front of me. I'm just sitting there. Wind threatening to push me over. It was going crazy. And had such peace. You know? Because not only did I push myself to go farther than I wanted to go, I pushed myself to where I was just out in God's creation. There was nobody there but me and God. And I had such peace. And it just came from being alone with Him. And And it's something I do all the time now, because that's where I find God. I find him in the nature, and I find him when I'm alone, because that's when I need to find him. Because I don't do good being alone. I really don't. I'm very social, but it's having to learn to be okay with being just with God when you're alone that empowers you the most. Because once you realize you really are never truly alone, that's when you start blossoming into who you need to be. Because you're not reliant on somebody else being there. You're fine with it just being you and God. Because it doesn't matter, because it's really not a religion. It's a relationship. And once you're okay with it just being your relationship, that's when everything just takes off. And it was really nice to learn that way. In some of the most beautiful country in our country. And it's just I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot, especially out in Montana. They need some help. I won't lie. But it's been absolutely incredible, the journey that God's put me on. Just with sports, with people, the connections I've been able to make, and it's been incredible. And I really can't wait to see what happens from here, because, like I said, the burden only gets heavier. You only get asked to do more, and with how much I'm already being asked to do, I can't wait to see what happens next. But if any of you guys have any questions, just for a young leader, just regarding anything. I've been able to approach some guys on my team regarding Christ. There's a couple of main ways that you can do it, especially when it comes to athletes. Athletes have a very peculiar way of going about things, and no matter what it is, most athletes will act the same. But a lot of athletes are superstitious. And they won't tell you they are, but they are. They're very superstitious, especially when it comes to competitions. And a big way that we as a team have been able to, stand together in Christ is before games and after games, we pray. We pray hard. We say before games, we have chapel beforehand, and we'll have the Christians in one chapel, and we'll have the Catholics in another chapel. But together as a team, we will say the Lord's Prayer before every time we walk out. And we also, a way we minister to the other teams that we go around to is, most people don't get to see because the broadcast shuts off. But after the football games, we invite the other team to pray with us at midfield. It doesn't matter where we are, what's going on, we will always pray first before anything else happens after the football game. And it's something super cool to see, because most of the time those guys wouldn't be on their knees. Wouldn't be praying and giving thanks. But to be able to at least say that Lord's Prayer with them after a game, it's something that has now been ingrained into them, and it gets them thinking, oh, God really did help me that game. Wow, I'm so thankful I didn't get injured that game. And then it just helps set a seed. Well, a lot of it's just the college, because a lot of people who probably, no, that's too controversial. I can't say that. It definitely is the college, because it's people who believe more in their education than they do themselves. They rely more on somebody else's understanding of a book than they do of their own. because they can't freely think. That's something they were never taught.
Is it kind of indoctrinating them into like, because it used to be spirited debate and difference of were welcome on higher places of education. Now it's just like it's frowned upon. They love any kind of diversity except diversity of thought.
Amen. No, it's definitely like that. If you don't accept everything, then you're a bigot, you're a hypocrite, you're awful. Oh my gosh, you're a racist, you're sexist. It's like, no, I have morals. It's like I stand up for something that I believe in, and if you're mad about that, then get over it, you know? And so it's definitely come to my attention a couple of times. But there's also, you got to have that discernment to not speak your true thoughts when it comes to certain things. Especially recently, we had a protest for, yeah.
They don't even know why. They don't even know why.
No, they ain't got a clue. They ain't got a clue, but it's okay because I'm not going to go out there and rip their signs out of their hands. I'm going to politely disagree with them and tell them that Jesus loves them. Because you can't do that. Because the second you do something aggressive and violent towards kids that are my age and kids that think they are so entitled, you're going to lock them out forever. And you just can't do that. You do have to be softer with them. And I know it's painful for an older generation to hear, especially since y'all are so hard-nosed. But you do kind of got to be a little bit softer. And especially me, I've had to like grow up with all the softies, but I've been raised by a bunch of hardies. So it's like,
all right, be careful, man.
So it's like I'm stuck not being of it, but being in it. And it's something you have to. It takes a lot of self-control. It really does. Especially when it comes to certain classes on campus, certain clubs on campus. You have to be very careful. You really do. Especially especially for me, I have to be extremely careful because I can get canceled as an athlete. And so, especially since I have a little bit more publicity than the others, very heavily. Because the students now think they know better than the teachers when they can't say their ABCs. But you can definitely see it transferring over because those college graduates are starting to have kids. And it's a rough cycle when you think about it because the indoctrinated ones are indoctrinating further, which then your teachers and professors have to be even more lax or they hurt somebody's feelings. And so it's becoming it just folds in on itself. And a lot of times I can see the teachers can't speak their minds. That's probably what hurts the most is the lack of freedom of speech in today's day and age. Our First Amendment is being taken away from us and most people don't even realize it. You can't speak your mind anymore without somebody getting you in trouble. Yeah, well, entitlement is the big issue. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of kids are being told that like, hey, your voice matters. Everybody needs to hear you and all this stuff. Where in reality, your word doesn't mean that much. I mean, I know it's hard to realize, but not everybody wants to hear what you have to say. And so it's like, I mean, they don't understand. Well, I kind of think it's their parents' fault. I mean, when you give and you give and you give and you give, you don't teach how to earn. I think you're stuck with somebody that's only ever going to take and take and take and take and take. And so they're being taught, hey, I'll pay for you to go to college, just get your degree. But even when they come out of college, they're still being taken care of instead of being sent out on their own like they're supposed to be. I mean, you went to college to get a degree, to get a job, to leave your parents and not be a burden on them anymore. And they're just, if they don't get what they want, they cry to somebody else, who cries to somebody else, who tells somebody else, and then it's like, oh, we're so burdened. We're so taken advantage of. And so it almost creates like a mob mentality. You know what I mean? It's like a mob victim mentality. And so they'll see somebody else being a victim. And then they're like, oh, if they're a victim and the same thing's happening to me, I must be a victim. And so then it just spreads amongst these teens of,
And social media helps that, right?
oh, social media is awful. And social media just feeds into it. You have people feeding and feeding, and it's just become almost a pandemic of its own. Yeah. So even though they may be the most educated, they're probably like least common sense. Yeah. Education, no wisdom is probably the best way to put that. They don't have any life experience to add on to their education. So you can be educated and you sure know a bunch, but you don't know how to apply it. It's like knowing how to build a house but having no tools. And so you're just left with a bunch of wood. It's definitely not near as bad.
University, but yet it's not in some
Yeah, it's definitely not near as bad.
No.
I've heard from a lot of people that Montana is about as close to libertarian as you could get. You know what I mean?
Very much so.
Like,
Individual freedom.
absolutely. Because they're like, sure, everybody can be chill, but they're also like, but if you walk on my lawn, I'll shoot you. Yeah, it's like leave me with my stuff and my stuff. Don't touch it, and we're good.
Actually, they base it off what the United States was based off of. You know what? You can do your thing, but I'm gonna do my thing.
Yeah, it's like that's all you.
And let's all be adults about it.
I'm all me, and we're chill. So Montana is pretty great. The indigenous people, oh my goodness, they are amazing. They are so resourceful. They are so hardworking. They don't stop. And they are really amazing. And being able to travel onto their reservations is something that's super cool because you see them.
Like police force and all the regulations.
Yes, it's so cool. Because they basically are their own sovereign nations. We do not have any jurisdiction over Indian land. They are.
Ask them if you come cross over and visit, or you get me invited.
You're allowed to drive through because the U.S. owns the roads, but any land inside the Indian reservation, the U.S. has no claim to whatsoever. And so it is done completely how they want it, how they deem fit, and all this stuff. They decide what businesses and everything.
So you can choose to travel and visit, but you're under their law.
Yes, absolutely. Under their law, under their jurisdiction. They have like special classes for it. We have our own like indigenous building to where it has like all of the tribes represented.
Really?
It has like all of their insignias and everything. It's super cool. And sometimes they'll do like, I think they're kind of like demonstrations. Yeah, they'll do like drum circles and like show it to people because technically it's sacred to them. And then they also put up like traditional teepees on campus, like the original like Great Plains ones, and they are beautiful. Oh, they are so cool. But
all right, let's give Evan a great big.
Absolutely.
And you could.
Thank you, sir.
Bless you. You lasted. You made it on time.
Oh, did I? I made it on time?
He said, I can't do 15 or 20 minutes, but he done well.
Oh, there we go.
I appreciate that so very much.